You know when you've put something off for as long as you possibly can and it's time to either give it up completely or just get started? That's what this video is about. How do you just get started? I've been sewing for, how long is a piece of string? I remember starting to learn how to sew and knit and craft as a really little kid. And then I took a hiatus. You know that whole getting into life, becoming an adult, giving up childish things? Yeah, I gave up sewing. Go figure. And then when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, I wanted to make her a whole heap of clothing that no other kid out there would have. So I had to rediscover skills. And then I stopped again because parenting is hard. Recently, I've gotten back into it and started with historical costuming because if you're going to go hard, go hard. That being said, there are things that I've learned along the way of re-establishing skills and figuring out how to do new things that I thought there are some out there who are just new to this whole sewing thing or new to historical costuming that, you know, my experience might help with. So if you're there, welcome. You're not alone. There's lots of us who have just found this new thing that is actually an old thing, but now it's a new thing. So let's get started. The first thing to know is that everybody is learning. You are not alone in learning. It doesn't matter how long you've been sewing for or crafting for, whatever your jam is today. Everyone is learning. If you've been sewing for 40 years, there is still something you don't know how to do. Costumers out there who look like they know everything. They are still learning, and they'll be the first to tell you that. It doesn't matter if you're particularly good at a particular stitch or construction or drafting a pattern from a picture. There is still something you don't know how to do. And once you realize that, the world becomes so much easier. So ask questions. If you see that somebody's done something particularly well and you want to learn how to do that, ask them how they did that. Ask them what tutorials they followed, because chances are they followed a tutorial as much as you need one. And if they didn't, most people in this community are really happy to share their findings or start you off down your own line of discovery and research. They won't do your research for you, so you still need to do that, but they'll get you started. They're happy to tell you, oh, go to archive.org and search for that, or I followed this tutorial, or this costumer does it particularly well. Maybe you want to follow them. Everyone is really keen to help everybody. And if you find someone who isn't, there's always someone else. Keep a journal. I am really bad at keeping a journal, just in life, study, sewing. But keeping a journal is really, really helpful for coming up against problems, trying to figure them out, making notes of what happened, what failed, what worked well. And you can always reference that back when you come up against that problem or something similar to it in the future. For one example, I was having extreme trouble with a pocket on a garment, and I tried this way and I tried that way and I made mock-ups and made samples and it just wasn't working. But every time I tried something, I noted what I was following and then noted what failed. I took pictures of how it failed so that if I saw that again, I could go back to my notes and figure out, oh, this is what I did wrong, or oh, this bit worked on this fabric up until this point. Cool, I just need to do X, Y, Z. Yes, that means you will have extensive notes and notebooks or a file on your computer if that's how you prefer to do stuff. Me, I'm a handwriter, which is weird for someone who works in the digital world, but it just sticks in my brain a lot better. So I have a very large journal for sketching and taking notes and taking sample fabrics and all sorts of things. This is a relatively new one, but every time I pick up something that I'm sewing or knitting, I have a journal that's there. Sometimes when I'm knitting, it's just to mark off my rows. Other times it's, I have no freaking clue what this direction is telling me to do, but I went and watched this YouTube video and it made no sense, but I got this tiny little bit. So keeping notes is a really, really good way of making sure you're not making the same mistakes. You're actually learning from them. Okay, so here is my 1870s-ish dress. And what I've done is I've listed out every piece that I'm going to need for that outfit. Remember, undergarments are vital to creating the right silhouette. You've probably heard that a million times. I am reiterating it. Also gone through what patterns I want to use. I do drape every now and then, but mostly for historical costumes, I tend to just use a pattern while I'm learning construction techniques. So you can see here that I've used a lot of black snail patterns. They're easily found on Etsy, and I actually found that their instructions were pretty good. You might find that every now and then the English translation is a little bit incorrect or ambiguous. If that's the case, then asking questions, like I said before. I've also gone through and listed, even though it's on the instructions, listed what notions and fabrics I will need for each piece. That's so that I can make sure in my brain that I've got everything listed and everything is in my head. I did make an attempt to keep prices so that I would know how much this costume cost me. That fell by the wayside because I ended up getting secondary pieces, fabric and notions when something wasn't working. So I've also done a sketch and some samples. I haven't got samples of the actual fabrics in here, but I've still got some, so I should definitely make use of that and put them in here, sort of up here. So what I do is I do fiber content and width, and sometimes some notes about where I actually want to put them, and then we'll see on the next page what it can reference as well. So on here, I like to keep an idea of where I am in construction, because when I was making this, I was working full-time and actually having to leave the house for work, and was finding that I would come back and forget where I was up to. So I'd look at, you know, a half constructed piece and not know where I was up to on it. So keeping a detailed list by day of what it is that I've done for that day, and some ideas of what I'll need to do. So this particular piece of fabric had shrunk a lot in pre-wash, so I'll need to cut new pieces or piece together some fabric for that particular piece, and whether or not there was some pulled threads. So here, that particular fabric for the chemise has some pulled threads. So I was just making a note of that so that I didn't think I'd done something wrong when I came back to do it. This is a great thing. I figured out how to put horsehair braid in. So this was not something that I'd ever done before. So I figured out a way that had worked for me. And it meant that the next time I came to do horsehair braid, which is on that monstrosity that's happening over there, I already had nutted that out and could reference this to figure out how to do it. And let me tell you, this is the happiest piece of note that you can possibly put in something. Is the costume finished? Yes. It's functionally complete. There are bits and pieces that I would like to do to it. Clearly, I forgot to make notes, but when I get around to it, I did have pictures taken, so I'm going to take them out and put the pictures in here as well, so that I've got a record of what it looked like. So here are a couple of images I had taken right after I finished, just put up on my Instagram channel. They're not the best, but when I find professional ones, I will make those available. So let's recap. Find your community, ask questions, keep records or a journal. The last one, don't get discouraged. If you can't figure something out, if you can't find a tutorial for it, if no one's answering your questions, don't get discouraged. Put it away for a day. Go have a cup of tea for half an hour. Eat something. The times that I've gotten super, super frustrated and angry at myself to the point of tears is when I've been reminded I haven't eaten that day. Eat something, have a cup of tea, then get back to it. If you still can't figure it out, that's okay as well. Find a different way to treat it. If you are looking to make a particular box pleat trim, for instance, and the fabric just isn't holding the box pleats, maybe you can either change the fabric or the trim, or do knife pleats. Do something else, make a ruffle. Ruffles are very forgiving, so you might get away with that. If something isn't working, this is all play. It's all play. Play with your fabric. If one way isn't working, play and try something else. Above all, have fun with it. Don't get bogged down in the details. If you're just starting out, think broad strokes, broad picture. Making a skirt is better than making half of a skirt where you've tried to make sure that you've felt the seams historically accurately and have given up because it's just so hard, or you can't figure out how to do it, or that pleat doesn't look right. A full skirt that you can wear out in the world when restrictions are lifted is so much better than something half attempted perfectly. Done is better than perfect, people. Done is better than perfect. I hope that you continue on this journey. Feel free to subscribe. I'm going to be coming back with more tips and tricks that I learn along the way, as well as book reviews, pattern reviews, that sort of a thing. So subscribe if you like the content. Go find your community. I've put some links in the description below, so have fun.